As alleged, Williams Jr. produced an AK-style pistol and forced one of the victims to sign a release from the recording contract at gunpoint.
This entire situation started with a claim that shocked the hip-hop community. A claim that positioned Gucci Mane in a way no one expected and pushed Pooh Shiesty into a situation that now looks almost irreversible. What initially sounded like industry gossip quickly escalated into a federal case involving multiple arrests, coordinated actions, and a narrative that goes far beyond music. Because according to emerging details, this wasn't just about a disagreement or a contract issue. It was about control, pressure, and a moment inside a Dallas studio that may have permanently altered multiple careers. And now, with federal authorities stepping in, the situation has officially moved from speculation to documented reality. At the center of this case is Lontrell Williams Jr., known as Pooh Shiesty, alongside his father and several associates, all now tied to serious federal charges. According to official statements, a total of 9 individuals were involved in what authorities described as a coordinated armed incident. Arrests were made across Dallas, Memphis, and Nashville, while one individual remains outstanding. But what makes this case particularly significant is not just the number of people involved, it's the origin point of the entire situation. Because investigators claim that everything traces back to a single meeting, one that was supposed to be about business, but quickly turned into something else entirely.
I'm Ryan Rabel, I'm the U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Texas. Thank you for coming. This week, 9 individuals, including well-known musical artists, kidnapped and robbed at gunpoint numerous victims at a music studio in Dallas, Texas. 8 of the 9 were arrested yesterday in Dallas, Memphis, and Nashville. These individuals who are charged and arrested include Lontrell Williams Jr., also known as Pooh Shiesty, Lontrell Williams Sr., Rodney Wright Jr., also known as Big 30, Kadarius Waters, Demarion Gibson, DeMarcus Glover, Corday Johnson, Darian McDaniel, and Terrence Rogers has not been arrested yet, but will be soon.
On January 10th, 3 music industry professionals traveled to Dallas for what appeared to be a standard contract discussion. The meeting had reportedly been arranged by Pooh Shiesty himself with the intention of negotiating terms related to his recording deal. On the surface, nothing about this setup raised concern. But according to federal allegations, the moment those individuals entered the studio, the environment shifted, rapidly and decisively. Multiple individuals, some traveling from out of state, were already in position, and within moments, the situation transitioned from a professional meeting into a controlled operation involving firearms and restricted movement. What happened next is where the situation becomes even more critical. According to the indictment, Pooh Shiesty separated Gucci Mane from the group and brought him into a private room. Inside that room, a contract was presented, one that had reportedly been prepared in advance. The request was direct: sign the document and release Pooh Shiesty from his deal. Initially, Gucci Mane refused. From a business standpoint, the refusal made sense, especially considering the value tied to an artist at that level. But the situation didn't remain a negotiation for long, because according to reports, a firearm was introduced and the tone of the interaction changed immediately.
As alleged, Williams Jr. produced an AK-style pistol and forced one of the victims to sign a release from the recording contract at gunpoint.
Under those conditions, Gucci Mane ultimately signed the document. But while this was happening in the private room, something else was unfolding simultaneously. In another part of the studio, multiple individuals allegedly began robbing others present at the location, including members of Gucci Mane's team. High-value items such as Rolex watches, jewelry, and cash were reportedly taken. And this introduces a major contradiction in the narrative, because if the primary objective was to secure a contract release, then why escalate the situation into a full-scale robbery? From an analytical standpoint, this suggests that the operation may not have been as controlled as intended and may have spiraled beyond its original purpose.
The remaining conspirators displayed firearms and robbed the other victims of Rolex watches, jewelry, cash, and other high-value items. One of the victims was actually choked by one of the defendants to the point of near unconsciousness.
Federal authorities further detailed that during the incident, firearms were displayed throughout the studio. Victims were physically assaulted, and at least one individual was choked to the point of near unconsciousness. Another defendant reportedly blocked the studio exit, preventing anyone from leaving. At the center of it all, Pooh Shiesty, who was already under home confinement for a prior federal case, was allegedly leading the operation. This detail alone significantly increases the legal weight of the situation because it indicates a direct violation of existing federal conditions. And according to investigators, his father was not just present, but actively involved in planning and executing the incident.
His father, Lontrell Williams Sr., is alleged to have helped plan and execute the federal kidnapping as charged in the complaint.
But what happened after the studio incident may have made things even worse. Within hours, several individuals allegedly began posting on social media, displaying items that closely matched the ones reported stolen. Watches, jewelry, and other valuables were seen being shown publicly, creating a direct connection between the suspects and the stolen property. From an investigative perspective, this is a critical mistake, because once stolen items become visible online, they transition from suspicion into evidence, and in this case, that visibility played a major role in building the timeline. Adding to that, some of the stolen items were reportedly equipped with tracking technology, allowing their movement to be monitored in real time. This created a continuous digital trail from the studio to various locations, including personal residences. Combined with surveillance footage, rental car records, phone data, and fingerprint evidence, investigators were able to construct a highly detailed sequence of events. Travel records confirmed coordinated movement between Memphis and Dallas, while bus records later showed multiple individuals returning immediately after the incident. At this point, the case was no longer based on claims. It was supported by layered, verifiable data.
The charging document outlines some of the evidence, just some, establishing the defendant's roles in the federal offense. This is as follows. Electronic monitoring data placing Williams Jr. at the offense location, which would put him in violation of his home detention conditions. Cell phone records and license plate reader data corroborating the coordinated travel of multiple defendants from Memphis, Tennessee to Dallas. Rental car records confirming Williams Sr. rented a vehicle that was used by the group. Surveillance footage from the offense location, a nearby office supply store, and a hotel where several of the defendants stayed following the offense. Fingerprint evidence as well that was recovered from the crime scene, matching at least two of the defendants. Social media posts by defendants displaying what appears to be stolen property just in the days following the offense. Greyhound bus records confirming the travel of multiple defendants from Dallas to Memphis the day after the offense. In this case, came to Dallas to conduct legitimate business, and they were met with firearms and violence as alleged in the charging document.
Another major turning point came through identification. Gucci Mane, legally known as Radrick Davis, was identified in official documents as a cooperating victim. He reportedly provided detailed descriptions of Pooh Shiesty, including clothing, appearance, and identity confirmation through both legal name and stage name. Other victims also identified additional individuals, including Big 30, placing him at the scene. Social media accounts were verified, connections were established, and the overall structure of the group became clearer. And once identification is confirmed from multiple sources, the legal position of the case becomes significantly stronger. Now, this is where the narrative shifts into a deeper industry perspective, because beyond the incident itself, there's a financial layer that cannot be ignored. Contracts in the music industry represent significant monetary value, sometimes reaching tens of millions of dollars. If Gucci Mane had allowed that contract to stand uncontested, it could have resulted in a massive financial loss. So from a legal standpoint, if he signed under pressure, the only way to invalidate that agreement would be to formally state that it was signed under duress, and that process inevitably involves cooperation with authorities. This creates a complex situation where legal survival and industry dynamics intersect, because if Gucci Mane intends to retain rights over Pooh Shiesty, he must prove that the release was forced. And proving that requires a consistent, documented explanation of events, which means speaking on record. From an outside perspective, this can be interpreted in different ways, but from a legal standpoint, it becomes a strategic necessity, especially when the stakes involve not just reputation, but multi-million-dollar contractual rights. At this stage, the case is no longer just about what happened inside a studio. It has evolved into a layered federal investigation involving alleged coercion, coordinated activity, digital evidence, and financial implications. And despite the overwhelming amount of information now available, one key question still remains unresolved. Was this a calculated attempt to gain freedom from a contract, or a situation that escalated beyond control due to multiple conflicting actions? Because when ambition, pressure, and opportunity collide, outcomes are rarely predictable. And in the end, while the legal system will determine the consequences, the full truth behind that night in Dallas may never be completely understood. Because beyond the evidence, beyond the statements, beyond the headlines, there are always details that remain unseen. And in an industry built on power, leverage, and perception, those unseen details are often the ones that matter the most.